I did have an unfortunate rage quit moment with Mega Man 7 a few weeks ago. I got to the last boss, Wily, in his little cheesy spaceship, and there are certain ways where he can corner you that make it really hard to get out. And I was playing the game really late at night again, in the early AM hours, and I used my last energy tank. I had only gone in with, I think, 3, and you can normally hold 4, and it usually takes me 4 to beat him, because I just take the hit. I don't always try to avoid it. I sometimes take the hit. And I had used 1 prior, and had done really, really well, and I went to pause the game to use the next one, and I got caught with a stray bullet just before I was able to hit that pause button, so it wasted that tank. Gotcha. And I didn't have it for the next round, and I was so angry because he had 1 little life left, one of those little bars left, and he killed me before I could hit him. So I got so angry that I just turned it off.
Sometimes it's best just to walk away like that. Especially that early in the morning where you can't just leave it and come back to it 30 minutes later.
Exactly.
Because most games do come with those little warnings now that you're supposed to take a break every 15 minutes. That's largely for eye strain, but I think it helps with the rage quitting a little bit too.
I think 15 minutes is a little silly because I played games where their tutorials were longer than 15 minutes.
Yes. Especially in this age of cutscenes.
Oh gosh. I miss being able to actually play the game.
I'm not exactly against cutscenes because there are times when even the silliest moments in a good cutscene is still more entertaining than a lot of the Hollywood movies I've been seeing lately. So I'm not exactly against them, it's just at least make them skippable.
Yes. I don't think they should take up half the game either.
Well, sometimes they have to draw things out. For example, Persona 4 Arena, which just came out. I have not played it yet, but I understand the story mode is actually many, many hours over the course of the different characters you can choose. And of course, this is a fighting game by the guys who made BlazBlue and Guilty Gear, who have taken the Persona 4 and 3 characters and put them into a big fighting game. Well, Persona is really known for its story. It's one of the highlights of what's kept the fandom going. So, of course, they had to convert that into the fighting game. And as most people know, fighting game stories are a little wonky. So, but they did a really good job with BlazBlue, so I guess that's why Atlas could trust them handling this one. But it is largely dialogue. Apparently, there's like 4 to 7 fights in any particular character's story mode, and yet it's about 3 hours long. That's a lot of dialogue.
That is a lot.
That is a lot.
Not quite. I don't think it's quite Metal Gear Solid level, but it's still a lot.
Started losing you on my connection there. I was starting to panic, but everything's okay.
Okay, good.
Technical issues. This is where we put up the little Prinny with the sign of "We'll be right back."
Yes.
So, with that little tangent out of the way, is there any other kind of news or interest that have popped up in your direction lately?
Diablo 3. I actually did want to talk a little bit about Diablo 3.
Fire away.
I recommend the game, but I recommend it as a casual experience. It's not a game that I think you can get into the way that people got into Diablo 2, because the replay value, at least in my opinion, is not as strong. The reason that is I think something they did to improve the game with the effect of affecting the replay value. And that was making it so that you get all of your skills. You don't have to assign points to things like strength or your mana pool or dexterity. You get baseline stats as you level up. And you get baseline stats on your gear. So what they wanted to do was make the gear how you customize your character. But it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me because there is no longer you have a chance to miss. I don't think I've ever missed in the game. I've never missed an attack. So you don't need dexterity if you're a barbarian. You don't need dexterity if you're a wizard. So the whole point that they wanted to do, I think they were going the right direction, but they didn't do it the right way.
It almost sounds like there was 2 schools of thought, one to make it more classic, with the missing being part of the option, and the other who was trying to remove it. And there is a lot of complaints about missing stuff in video games, especially the more action-oriented ones that has a lot of shooter elements. There's a lot of complaints about the ones where you're aiming at somebody and they're missing anyway. It seems like Hellgate London was one of the first ones to really do that. If you're going to take it out, like you said, there should be something probably done with the whole... what am I saying?
With the stat that used to supply it?
Yeah, something needs to be done with the dexterity and the whole handling of the missing stat. Yeah.
Well, it does, dexterity on gear, for a barbarian at least, does supply a small amount of dodge. But it's not something that you want to stack with, so it's ultimately a stat that you tend to ignore as a barbarian.
Mm-hmm.
You want to go for strength, vitality, skill boosts for barbarians. They did do something recently here in this latest patch that fixed legendaries to where they were actually interesting. Before, legendaries were sort of like a more rare version of a rare item, and they typically were not as good. Some of them were still the best items in the game that you could get for that slot, but they've also added what they call Paragon levels, and what these do is you continue to gain experience once you reach the level cap, level 60, but they start going towards your Paragon level for that character. And there are 99 of them, so you can get, you start at Paragon 1, and you can go all the way up to 100. And you gain a base stat, I believe it's 3 vitality and 3 of whatever your core stat is. So for barbarians, it would be strength. For wizards and witch doctors, intellect, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And you also gain a base magic find and a base gold find. And what the idea was is it would solve 2 problems. One was the end game, which I don't think was enough of a solve because you're still just mindlessly grinding for levels now. And the other was for the magic find problem. They didn't want to force you to sacrifice survivability and attack stats for magic find. So they gave you a base of it and then capped it at 300. You get 3% per Paragon level. So you still, by the time you hit Paragon level 100, you have your 300%. You no longer have to have magic find gear because it doesn't do anything for you.
That's not a bad fix, but I have to agree that the Diablo 2 did it better.
Yes. It's one of those catch-22s. They tried to answer what fans wanted, which was a way to not have to re-roll the same class, but, get your points back. They addressed that a little bit in Diablo 2, but you couldn't sit there and do it infinitely like you can in World of Warcraft. And so when the Diablo 3 development team came in, they decided that this was a bad system altogether. So they wanted you to have all of your abilities, and the way that you would customize your stats was on the gear itself.
Which under normal circumstances would be a fantastic idea.
Yes. It feels more like an arcade World of Warcraft that you don't always get good stuff. Mm-hmm. Now I know there's a ton of memes out there for World of Warcraft, like 4 strength leather belt is one of them. I remember that. But the gear, most of the time, if you find a piece of gear, it's going to have a stat on it that you can use. Diablo 3 didn't really have that. You could use every stat, but they were less effective to a large degree.
And that's kind of a major point, that you don't want to have something that's actually going to downgrade your character, even though it's supposed to be upgrading. And while that sounds kind of obvious, the way they set up the game, because not all the stats exactly function the way I think they originally planned to, they didn't fix what they undid. So you have a bunch of items that might have been fantastic, but are now less quality than what some other set would do, which limits what kind of character builds you can make.
Yeah, and before I'm accused of hating on the game, I actually did enjoy the game. I sunk probably 200 hours to it. I know there are people out there with a lot more than that, because I've seen people with 800 hours into the game. But I didn't find it fun enough to warrant going through it. I got my barbarian up to level 60. I got to Act 2 Inferno, and I got bored of the game. It wasn't that I couldn't pass it. It wasn't that I felt underpowered or that I just didn't like the way it played. I just felt that I had reached the end for me. I had just run out of things to do.
Mm-hmm. And in Diablo 2, there was always this kind of progression thing that the combat even more difficult. And by the end of the game, there were certain characters that did far better than others, and certain builds that did far better than others, because I kind of preferred the types of characters that would allow you to bring lots of allies. So the Necromancer and the Druid and those type of characters were the ones that I tended to favor. And back in the day before a more recent patch, they were just completely outclassed on those difficulty levels. because they're hordes which just fall apart in no time. And of course, your armor's not going to be as good as a standalone character normally, so it made playing those kind of character classes a lot harder to do. And I think that is something they've probably fixed a little better in the Diablo 3, is all of the character classes are viable to the end game.
Well, they made some of the abilities more viable in Diablo 3 also. The recent patch also buffed a lot of abilities that weren't being used, but I have to admit, didn't really notice huge differences in my ability to lay waste to the demon horde, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't notice. So I know that they're there because I know that the numbers are bigger, but I wasn't having a huge issue killing things anyway, so it just wasn't something that I took a lot of notice in. But that said, I haven't really played the game that much since the patch. I did log in and I probably played it for an hour or two, and then I just got to that point where it was like, I've done this. There's really no point for me to go back and do it again. So I don't know that I'll go back into it before the expansion comes out, but there's always a chance, so I haven't uninstalled it.
You never know when you're going to get the inkling. And just to clarify, I have played the demo, but I have no copy, nor have I played the full game yet. It's something I intend to, because I do tend to enjoy those kind of games. I've got Fallout Brotherhood of Steel and Diablo 1, 2, and Titan's Quest and Torchlight and all sorts of games like that. But so I do enjoy these kind of games. I do tend to play them. Even the really bad ones I kind of get into a little bit, so I'm a little more forgiving than probably some of the gaming audience would be toward it. For example, I actually love Dungeon Siege 3. There's been a lot of hate on that one, but I actually got a kick out of it. I'm sorry.
I have that game, but I, again, haven't played it.
Dungeon Siege 2 I couldn't get in quite much, but I kind of like the first one.
Well,
I really like the third one.
See, my copy's on Steam, so I have all three of them, and I didn't really play it, so I think I put maybe 45 minutes into the first one, and I was kind of confused. It doesn't really tell you what you're supposed to do, so...
It feels open-ended despite the fact
maybe
it's not.
Yeah.
And that is kind of off-putting a little bit. And maybe that's the reason why the Bull movie was so horrible. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I remember playing Dungeon Siege back in the day, and I don't remember having the confusion issue that I'm having now. So maybe it was just a different time.